Just give me a little bit of peace, steady job and some food to eat. Just give me a little bit of peace, steady job and some food to eat. Just give me a little bit of peace.
Richard, once again, says it was never a gang at all. It was more like a crew that hung out. Okay, thanks, Richard. I do believe that the Bell Gardens Police Department labeled them a gang, though, right? I feel like I saw that somewhere. I could be wrong, but either way, I appreciate your comment. David says the 1962 issue of Time magazine that reported on the 1960 census characterized Bell Gardens as a low-class, stagnant community, along with Newark, New Jersey. Damn, we were in the same category as Newark, New Jersey at one time. David continues, as I worked at Ball Drugstore stocking those 1962 magazines, the idea of doing better was born in me and never left. Wow, so you thought you could do better because the Time magazine basically labeled Bell Gardens a shithole. That's pretty crappy. Wow. Alma says, I lived in Gotham Street in the late 80s. I used to call it the zombie block. A lot of addicts high on PCP. Yes, PCP seemed to be a big drug of choice back then. I haven't smelled it in over 20 plus years, but I could still remember the horrible stench of PCP, aka water, aka Gorilla P. It was definitely Night of the Living Dead back in the 1980s, for sure. Debbie says, okay, I think they got together in the 1970s. Mark Martin, Jeff Martin, Billy Scott, Jimmy, Rusty, Dale Mafouz. That's just some of them. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Debbie. And if you could put me in touch with any of those people, I would truly appreciate it. Linda says, me, Donna, and Tina tried to do a Bee Gees White Girl. LOL. Didn't work out well. Total fail. Wow, I'd love to hear more about that. The Bee Gees White Girls. Look, Bell Gardens had, to this day, when I was a kid, I just remember them having some of the flyest women, man. Bell Gardens has some of the prettiest girls. That's where I fell in love with Latinas. That's where I was just like, man. Because before that, I didn't really, it was really just kind of like black and Asian in my neighborhood. I was in Long Beach and didn't see too many sexy-ass Latinas. But damn, Bell Gardens changed all that. Joe says it did start in the 1970s. Who remembers Shannon Hatley? I went to BGI with Shannon, Mark, and Greg, also a member from the White Boys, started another gang in BG. Thank you, Joe. I feel like I'm getting closer and closer to getting answers. Mitchell says, I remember a big fight on Habaneria in Eastern gas station, late 70s. Bell Gardens, White Boys, and King Cobras, I think. Damn, okay. Getting a little juicy. Now we're starting to get somewhere. Robert says, yes, it was the Cobras. That was behind Quickway in the alley. Edgar says, who remembers the Marlowe Park Stoners? Doesn't ring a bell to me, Edgar, but I am going to look more into that. Jeff says, I remember as early as approximately the early 70s seeing Bell Gardens White Boys graffiti tagged on a wall at Eastern and Habaneria. And a few years later, talk of fights between the Bell Gardens White Boys and the King Cobras. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff also says there was a story about a teenage boy hanging from a tree at Bell Gardens Park. I think that was a white boy, and it may have been gang-related. I, too, remember hearing that story growing up. Sarah says, I remember a man named Bam Bam from BG White Boys. He was friends with my mom in the late 80s, early 90s. Yeah, this is when I just heard the name heavy, like a lot, don't hang out in Fort Park, past sunset or whatever, sundown, because the Fort Park posse was deep. It was just something that would travel through the city. And the Bell Gardens White Boys, I didn't ever hear anything about them, being in my town in the 80s and 90s. I would always remember hearing about them, yesteryear, from older stories from the 70s and early 80s before I even set foot into Bell Gardens. Kelly says, I played softball at Bell Gardens Park in 71, I think, and one day during practice, 4 men from my family showed up to take me home. They were all 6 feet to 6'6". They went to the coach and let him know there was going to be a fight between the White Boys and the Locos. Practice ended and the coach took the other girls home. Damn, shit was popping back then, huh? Okay. 1971. All right, early 70s we're talking. All right, BG White Boys came to my rescue at my dad's house week of the fair at Bell Gardens Park. We had trouble with neighbors, about 20 of them. They showed up and took care of business. Their cars were destroyed, beat up, a massive riot. It was wild. Cops came, took several of my neighbors to jail. They never bothered my dad's house again. Larry Moreno, Victor Gomez, Ray Nunez, myself were partying, and they decided they wanted to fight. It was 20 against 5 of us. That's when the BG White Boys came to our rescue. Damn, thanks for sharing that, Christopher. Dennis says, I was there, Christopher, when you came to the fair and said you needed help. We all loaded into cars and followed you to your house. And as soon as we got there, it got crazy. Fights going on everywhere. I remember chasing this one Mexican, and as he ran in the house, I kicked the screen door shut, which made him fall back, and I just drilled him to the ground, then jumped in the car and started smashing the windshield out. Jumped on the car and started smashing the windshield out, and effing crazy. But we all had our adrenaline pumping, and the reason we were all at the fair was because the Mexicans put the word out that there better not be any white boys at the fair or they were going to get their asses whipped. So every white boy in town showed up at the fair, and they decided they didn't want none after all. Damn, what a story. Richard says, I remember those days, us against the Cholos. So glad we made it out alive. Those were some crazy times. David said, don't know when, but why they formed should be obvious. The same reason we started the BGWL. I don't know what that is. Seen Bell Gardens White Boys versus Cobras football game at the Ford Park around 77 to 78. ESA called Nano. An SI called Nano took a hard shot and didn't like it, and the place exploded. The Bell Gardens White Boys were outnumbered 3-1, and they had to fight their way out. We jumped back in the van and smoked the tires, getting out before the bullets started flying. Lester says, I remember the Bell Gardens White Boys while in high school. The leader for a time was Johnny Lee Clary, who later became Johnny Angel, the wrestler, and further down the track became a grand wizard of the KKK and then a traveling preacher. Damn. Wow, I feel like we got somewhere on this during my little research project about the Ford Park Posse and the Bell Gardens White Boys. I will continue this series. I will continue to try to find someone who was part of either of these gangs or crews or whatever they call themselves. So please do stay tuned, and please hit the subscribe button on YouTube, Dusty Vision TV. Follow me on Facebook, Dusty Vision TV. Follow me on Instagram, Dusty Vision TV. I love you, Bell Gardens.